a street right next to them, and it goes through the other side
Yes.
of the golf course.
Yep.
It's just not gonna stop anywhere. They're gonna have to bring it to some kind of standards.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and call to order the regular city council meeting for September 16th. As you can tell, City Clerk Timmons is not here today, so we have the Deputy City Clerk filling in for her. And I will be leading invocation and pledge of allegiance. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity to come together and do the people's business. I pray that you grant us wisdom as we seek to do just that. And I pray that you will continue to protect the men and women who serve us overseas, as well as those who serve our local community. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty, we have no special guests and announcements on the agenda. The next order of business is approval of the September 3rd regular city council meeting minutes.
Motion to approve?
Second?
We have a motion and second to approve those minutes. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, say no. I haven't received any public comment cards at this time. Normally, we do the financial statement review at the second meeting of the month. Ms. Vega is on vacation this week, so I believe we did include them in the packet, but she will be presenting them at the first meeting in October. Department reports are at the first meeting of the month, so I'd entertain a motion to have all ordinances and resolutions read by title only.
So offered.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Is there any discussion on that matter? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Motion carries. Any opposed? Didn't think so. Okay. On unfinished business, we have the second reading of ordinance 984 regarding surplus property. Madam Deputy City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 984, an ordinance amending Chapter 2 of the Maumelle City Code to increase the value of surplus personal property permitted to be sold on authority of the mayor, and to increase the value of surplus personal property that must be sold by public bid or marketing processes.
Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of Saturdays ago, when the Razorbacks traveled to Mississippi, I didn't have anything better to do since that wasn't going too well, so I got on Unicode, which is the website that a lot of the cities upload their code to Unicode. And so I wanted to give y'all an example of what other cities allow their mayors or the mayor's delegate to dispose of. I looked at some of the cities that were similar to Maumelle, and just to give you a few examples here, Bryant allows the mayor to go up to 6,000, Eureka Springs 5,000, Forest City 5,000, little tiny Lowell, population 9,000, they go up to $20,000. Malvern, 15,000, and Siloam Springs, 10,000. So just gives you a little bit of context to what we're talking about here, and you see where these other cities rank, and our mayor currently only has authority for $100. So that's why I wanted to go with at least 2,000. I mentioned at the last meeting that I would be more than happy to hear some more comments if anybody had other ideas on an amount. Personally, I would be more comfortable with a higher amount, but even more than that, I'd prefer to have an ordinance that everyone is agreeable on and would pass. So that's why we went with the 2,000. So just wanted to give y'all some context on what other cities do in the state.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Mosley.
Yeah, I wasn't here the last time, but I viewed the video this morning, and a lot of really good comments by everybody on that. And I like you trying to pick a lower number other than, say, 10,000 or something like that. But I also liked Councilmember Holt's comments about where you said that we're in charge of the accounting and that sort of thing. And I do enjoy seeing what's going on, what kind of comes through. And we don't get that many of them. It's not like we get 2 or 3 or 4 every week. And like I was curious about the code enforcement car, and I was kind of glad to hear about that and see what's going on there. So I think I'm happy with kind of where it is. $1,000, I'd probably vote for it. 500. So I don't know. I'm leaning against it, but I think I don't have any problem with your idea. If it were business, I'd say yeah, let's do that. So, but that's my only comment. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Mosley. Councilmember Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. I would be comfortable with 2,000. Anything more than that, I probably wouldn't be comfortable with. I think as was brought up last time, I think it would be better to step into this a little at a time and see where we hit. And we may want to increase it later. I would go with 1,000. I don't know that I could support over 2,000. That's a pretty big jump. And if we find 2,000 2 or 3 years from now, we want to raise it again, we have that option. It's a testing period. So, thank you, Mayor.
You are welcome. If there are no further comments, this will be on third reading at the next meeting in October. We'll move on to new business. Currently, the first item of new business is Ordinance 985 with absent an objection from the City Council. I'm going to delay that a little bit. We're still waiting on Mr. Trumper with Stevens, who is making his way from Sheridan. So I think we'll have enough to keep us busy before that. With that, I'd ask for the first reading of Ordinance 986, amending certificate pay for uniformed officers. If you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 986, an ordinance amending the procedure for determining certificate pay for uniformed employees of the police and fire departments and for other purposes.
And so this is last year, probably in the middle of the year. I don't remember exactly, and I don't apparently have that ordinance in front of me. The council raised the certificate pay for police officers. And then I guess subsequent to that, we found an ordinance that set that certificate pay by ordinance. And so the city attorney recommended that we amend our ordinance as she's about to explain.
Well, I was just going to state that, as you can see, the original ordinance setting these amounts is rather old. It's ordinance number 265. So it was a number of years ago. And the reason we considered and chose to change this to be by resolution, an ordinance is ordinarily something that is going to be like a permanent in nature. So if that amount were never going to change, or if it's going to be codified, that it be at that amount, which it's not, then you would use an ordinance for that purpose. A resolution is more commonly used for things like this that are going to be, you know, the council's going to choose to adjust for inflation and that kind of thing. So that was the reasoning behind that.
And the goal would be then, if the at the third reading, we'd also be presenting the resolution to name the certificate pay what the council said it was going to be last year, right? So essentially, we have an ordinance saying that it shall be a certain amount that's lower than we're currently paying based on the council's resolutions from last year. So that resolution will accompany the third reading. And so if there are no further comments, or any comments, this will be on second reading at the next city council meeting.
Do we need to come up with some comments to save some time?
I've got some mayor's comments that can take a while. Councilmember Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, since we're kind of spending some time waiting here. If I can impose on the Director of Senior Services, she has an announcement to make.
Thank you, Councilmember Saunders. Actually, I remembered that we had two. I do want to invite all of our council and, of course, all of the public to join us at our 15th year celebration, Thursday, September 26th. It'll be starting at 5. We'll have Natural State Big Brass Band combo from 5 to 6:30, and then following we'll have bingo with our esteemed new city police chief as our guest caller. We're really excited about that. Again, we're celebrating our 15th year of service to the community. Counting on each other, we'll also be providing hamburgers and hot dogs, and it's open to the community. Really excited about that. The other event is we have Cancer Awareness Education Event and Fashion Parade on Wednesday, October 9th. This is in partnership with the New Outlook Cancer Recovery Program at CHI St. Vincent's Hospital. And it's a special luncheon to honor members and their guests that are either undergoing cancer or cancer survivors. They're invited to attend free of charge, and we'll have a hat and shawl parade also occurring during the events. And one of the sweet ladies, Miss Nita Lukes, has actually made knitted over 1,000 caps. Guys, that's huge. I haven't even made my first one yet because, yeah, that's huge. Over 1,000 hats. The pink hats and the teal hats and shawls will be donated to the program after the event. So we're really excited about both those events and excited about the partnership to put this on with CHI St. Vincent Hospital.
And what time did you say it is on October 9th?
It'll begin at 10:45 on October 9th.
What about the 26th?
The 26th begins at 5. The bingo will begin at 6:30, though. So if you're just coming for the bingo, that's 6:30 to 7:30. Otherwise, the big brass band combo will be from 5 to 6:30 prior. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So with that, we'll move off of the first reading of Ordinance 986, and we'll jump to Mayor's comments. At the last council meeting, the council asked how much we had been taking to the recycling with waste management. We provided in the council packet the numbers annual numbers from 2016 to 17, 17 to 18, 18 to 19, but it came to approximately 600 tons a year was taken there. Current status of that is we are trying to see what it would cost us to take those recyclables to Conway instead of to the current place with waste management. And if we find a place that's lower than $55 a ton, that'd be nice. I had on here a discussion about the status of 100 Millwood, the old court renovations, and talking about the sale of that property. I know some questions have come up. I think after some recent discussions with bond counsel, we might, I can give you the bird's eye view, but we'll want to look into it a little bit more. Is there's some concern that since the 03 or one of the really old bonds was used to renovate the building, and that those bonds have essentially been rolled into the Series 2012, which we're looking at turning into the current ones, that if we were to sell that to a non-governmental entity, that the funds have to maybe go to repay the bonds, or we're still looking into that a little bit. I thought I had a better idea of the situation when I put it on the council packet, but now I'm thoroughly confused. So did you have something to add? Please.
Thought.
Yes, jump in.
So this came up in terms of me reading through the many pages of documents that you were in your packet, where it mentioned that we needed to disclose any sales of property, and so I just brought this up to Kirby. There are a number of funds associated with it. If you read this, there's a revenue fund and a bond fund, and so there are certain places certain types of money has to go at certain times. Because this property was renovated with bond money that's since been rolled into other refundings, including the present one, it would, as I understand it and just discussed with Kirby, and y'all might want to ask her questions, those proceeds would need to be placed into the bond fund. Now, that, of course, frees up possibly other funds that we would be using to pay the bonds anyway. But we just wanted to make sure everyone was aware, and that didn't come as any surprise, and we didn't make, plans for that money, to be immediately used for a different purpose.
Mr. Spivey? How nice of us to hit these comments.
It's okay. I was talking to Councilman Holt for me. I've been coming out here since 1985 to meetings, and it'll be a sad day when I can't come anymore. Here's the crux of the problem. We have a building that was renovated with governmental funds, and we didn't mortgage it. It's not security for the debt, but because it was renovated, we have some covenants which say we won't sell it. Now, what happens is Melissa and Kirby try to educate me, but I'm usually the last one to understand what's going on, and that's my fault. But as I understand it, this is a facility that's not being used anymore, correct? Right. And you've replaced it with a new facility. And there are always some exceptions for replacement of facilities with the same or facilities that have the same utility for purposes. And I think what we want to do, now that we're aware of this, is we just want to look at this, make sure before you take a step to sell it, that we don't do something which is going to create a problem that you could be criticized for later. I don't think it's going to be an issue, but we just need to, we're bad about asking y'all to tell us the story and give us the facts, but that's what we need to do. And you and Kirby and I'll get together, Melissa, and try to focus on that a little bit more. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, yeah, that's the status of 100 Millwood.
Do we have an estimated value on the property?
Yes. I'm very hesitant to guess what I think it was. I think it was less than the one before. Yeah. And I don't know. I haven't looked at it in a while. 900,000? Is that right? Yeah.
That's what I remember.
Somewhere in that range.
Went down from over $1 million.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, my memory is correct, just as I thought.
Sadly.
Yeah. The next thing I was going to talk about, I wasn't going to talk about it, is the tentative schedule for the budget meetings I put in here. Folks, this is really going to depend on our onboarding with OpenGov, which is not even fully set up, and in some ways is confusing because we're rushing them through that process, but I've spoken with department heads that go, oh, this is going to be awesome. And we think that you guys will definitely see that. But that's going to depend on how quick we can get that into that new system, get that budget set up properly. So, but these are the tentative dates so far. Councilmember Scott.
Speaking of budget,
Yes.
I took some photographs of the front of our building, and I know that over the years, we have not taken good care of the outside of this building. Everybody's busy. We don't have anyone dedicated to doing it. Parks and Rec is busy. Public Works is busy. I did it on Sundays for about a year. Quit doing it. But the weeds growing up through the sidewalk, in the parking lot, the cigarette butts, just general lack of, if there were no cars out there, this would look like an abandoned building.
Yes.
And we're going to spend a whole bunch of money on a renovation, which is wonderful. I'm so happy about that. But I think that we really need to consider putting some money in the budget that's going to cover the maintenance of the outside of the building as well, so people can walk up with pride.
So I today, is Mr. Hogan around? Today I walked up and I think I'd left a message for Jack, and I said, who's the one that's supposed to keep up with all these weeds out here? And I'm not quite sure who used to do it. Maybe it was you and it hasn't been done since then.
Long time.
But Public Works has a work order in to spray and weed eat the weeds. The cigarette butts are policed fairly frequently with community service workers. Is that accurate, Jack Stowe in the back row? Mr. Stowe?
Jack Stowe in the back row.
Jack Stowe, Special Projects Manager. That's actually, the former mayor made it the responsibility of planning and zoning because they're the primary users of it, and they're supposed to keep it clean and looking okay.
And now I know, so.
And as far as the weeds, we do have a work order, like you said. I just spoke to Mike earlier today. We were going to have Philip do it, but his guys start work at 8, so there's cars in the parking lot, so.
It's just an ongoing thing, and we just need to
It
make sure
is.
that we stick it on our calendar occasionally, so we, looks good. Thank you.
Correct. So I'm constantly going through life and going, now, how come this isn't being done? Was I supposed to do something to initiate this, or is it on autopilot? And I'm finding things that aren't on autopilot that I assumed were on autopilot, and so
Thank you.
that's
I
a new
appreciate
thing. Did I see the city attorney moving the mic down?
I did. I did want to just mention, we do have community service workers every single week. I sign up new ones. So if there's something that they can do,
Well, we don't have a weed eater here at City Hall. That kind of equipment belongs to Public Works and Parks and Rec, and that's why they've always done it. But back in the old days, the two directors used to always argue about who actually had to do it, so.
Well, if we
It
keep
was-
them poisoned, we won't have to.
We don't need our dirty laundry everywhere, Mr. Stubb.
and
Right.
if there are things that can be done with, hand tools, like I know they've used hedge clippers occasionally at the police station and some things like that, but just keep them in mind.
I will.
Dangerous weapons. I represented a city once who had one of their community service workers with get shot with a tranquilizer gun from animal control. It was fun, but so we don't let them play with that. Councilmember Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. Just adding to this, I know you've done this. My darling bride is a master gardener, and I know that there was 2 or 3 of them that used to come over and take care of the flower beds and da-da-da. The biggest holdup, and they quit doing it, because we don't have a sprinkler system around this building. And they got tired of 95-degree weather when it's humid out there having to haul buckets of water, so they ended up quitting it. So we might even look into a sprinkler system to help with the flowers and, if we've got enough money.
Sure. Thank you. With that, I think we can hop back and address new business. I saw Mr. Trumper arrive. I'm not going to guess how fast he was driving on his way here. But let's hop back to the first reading of Ordinance 985, providing for the issuance and sale of franchise fee bonds. Madam Deputy Clerk, could you please read that by title only?
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 985, an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of franchise fee revenue refunding bonds for the purposes of currently refunding the city's outstanding capital improvement revenue refunding bonds, Series 2012, providing for the payment of the principal of and interest on the bonds, authorizing the execution and delivery of a trust indenture, prescribing other matters relating thereto, and declaring an emergency.
All right, on your desk, you should have received the new ordinance. If you receive it electronically, if you got a paper copy, it should be included in there. I do have some extras set aside if any council members would like to see it. So, where to begin? The first thing I just want to reiterate is that the purpose for refunding and issuing bonds is not to spend more money or make more purchases. It's actually designed to pay off some of the city's current debt faster than we already are paying it off. And one of the things that was most interesting is when in July, there was a little cheat sheet that was given out to everyone, and that kind of showed where we thought we would be at. During August, the tax-exempt bonds the market was amazing, and it was I was so excited. And then I got an email from Leanne last week saying, oh, no, like it is not as good. And so we've kind of changed what this ordinance is, and I'll let the smarter people actually explain it here in a moment. But we've changed the ordinance from a specific numbers to I think what we're calling a parameters-based ordinance. And so rather than having to pick a particular day to issue them, this will allow folks to keep an eye on the market day to day to make a decision and then pull the trigger and come back with a confirming resolution. Am I saying all this right? And so it's a little bit different than we've done in the past, but it's also a different reason that we're refunding and issuing bonds than we have in the past. And so if there's questions, you can ask them. Do you want to come up and actually tell them the actual truth now?
Same thing, Mr. Mayor. You've already said it all.
Okay.
I don't think I can improve on that. Mr. Mayor, Madam Clerk, Madam City Attorney, members of the council, my name is Bill Spivey. I'm with the firm of Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings. With me tonight is my partner, Kirby Moralia, who has handled a lot of things in the past. I know y'all would much rather have her up here, but I'm letting her stay off her feet. And Jack Trumper, who has come in. Leanne could not be here tonight. We've been running back and forth. We're in a rather unusual market right now. It's been very volatile. But what Mayor Norris explained is exactly what we're doing tonight. You have before you a parameters ordinance, which basically says your underwriters have the authority to go sell those bonds at a point when the market, in their judgment, is in your best interest. I think you remember what Leanne was talking to you about when we were out here before was trying to hit an interest rate in combination with a maturity or a length of time that it's out that allows you to not only shorten the maturity of these bonds, but to reduce the cost to the city. And that's been the goal. And I'm going to let Jack talk to you about what's actually been going in the market. But what's happened is, and I know those of you who follow this stuff, you know, we've got a market that's gone down like this and it's gone back up there. And as I've always told y'all, I'm just a lawyer. I don't sell bonds. I try to make sure that when we do it the right way. This parameters ordinance includes a number of variables which, as long as in the sale of the bonds you don't exceed those, then we come back and confirm to you once the bonds are sold exactly what those amounts are. It's a confirming resolution. I've done these. I've been doing this for, as you know, a number of years, more than I'll brag about tonight, but we've done these in the past. We don't like to do them because we'd rather know the market's stable and we can come in here and tell you what the bond's been sold for. But when the market has been unstable and volatile, sometimes we do these parameters ordinances and we try to pick numbers which we think are reasonable and also allow you to accomplish your goals, which is to refund these bonds. And remember, we had a franchise issue in 2003, another in 2008, and they were refunded in 2012. And then this is yet another refunding. And the parameters are not to exceed 3.75%. An average weighted maturity, which is when you do this calculation, it's not more than 10 years, a maturity of not more than 15. And I think those are the major parameters, I believe, that are in the ordinance, but I think you'll find those in section 2 or 3 of the ordinance to confirm that. So what I want to do is let Mr. Trumper explain to you what the underwriters do in terms of watching the market and trying to pick the best time to do this. And that's really what's before you tonight. So I'm going to sit down, be quiet, and let Jack talk. Jack?
I should just let you start it off. I just wasted my breath. No.
Mayor Norris, member of the council, great to see you all this evening. And yes, I drove appropriately. And I wanted to be sure to get here. Everything that everybody said has kind of been true. We just had a real choppy market last week. As was mentioned earlier, we've gone through this stretch where interest rates have really come down, and they've come down fast. Well, guess what? When interest rates are coming down and bond issuers, not only in the state of Arkansas, but all over the country, are wanting to capitalize this and lower their interest cost. And so a lot of times you'll have a supply and demand. By approving this parameters resolution, we can go to a day-to-day. We've already got the offering document ready to go. All we've got to do is send it out, price the bonds, and lock in rates at what we believe are in the best interest of the city of Maumelle. And so this gives us that time to do that, that we're not doing it on an, we have 2 days a month to do that if we're going to come back before the council. So the 10-year treasury, which is kind of our benchmark, went up 10 basis points across the board on Friday. Now it pulled back some today. It came down a little bit today. Now part of that probably was because of the news about the oil industry. And so we just want to be able to position that we're not chasing the market, that we're positioning the bonds to be sold at the best time in the best interest of the city of Maumelle. And by adopting this parameters ordinance, it gives us that flexibility, for lack of a better word.
Thank you. I wanted to reiterate also that the numbers we're looking at today are, or as of Thursday, were better than we saw in July, than better than we saw there. So it's not as though the numbers that were originally presented to you have gone away and it's gotten worse from there. They just got a lot better between July and now, and the idea is to see if we can get it when it's even a little bit lower. Councilmember Tierney.
Am I correct in hearing that the target rate we're looking for is 3.75%?
I want to say that was the not to exceed.
Nothing higher, something lower, okay.
So if you, in fact, if you look at the parameters in that section, section 2, and a little bit in section 3, the goal is that those numbers were set such that if we shouldn't be hitting the max on all of those, or it's not that great a deal. But we raise, say, the not to exceed amount for the principal to a certain amount, and then the interest rate to a different amount, such that you can structure it in such a way to maximize it. So we shouldn't be looking at hitting all of these parameters, because I think we're not ideal if that's the case. Have I confused? Did I make it worse?
No, that's perfect. But sometimes the obvious escapes us, and I just want to make it very clear. Those are not to exceed numbers. If for any reason the market is such that you can't achieve those numbers, we don't sell bonds. And it doesn't happen. I just want to make sure everybody understands that. But the idea is exactly what we want to try and get the best rate that's less than those. But those are set at the upper end of what would be acceptable. I think Stevens believes that they can do better, but if they can't, then they're not going to sell the bonds. And of course, before they do that, they're going to be in touch with the mayor, and they're going to talk to the mayor and make sure that you all know what's going on. So I just want to clarify that.
Thank you. Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to understand, currently we're paying 3.98 on our current balance. Is that correct? That's what we show on the July document we were given, or average coupon. Average coupon of 3.98. Okay. I guess my question is, if our upper limit is going to be 3.75, clearly we want to get it lower than that. I mean, that's the goal, to get it as low as possible. And I understand the bond market. I was getting excited too, and then it's been bad the last month since y'all came in here last. I guess my question would be, if it is worst case scenario and it was 3.75 average coupon, what does that look like in terms of actual savings? Do you have?
I don't have those numbers with me.
Okay.
Our thinking is that we have a goal to hit, which is to shorten the maturity from 2037 to 2033, and then to reduce your annual payment by approximately $25,000.
Increase
it by. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to have anything less than that 2033, and we don't want to increase that payment any more than the 25. And so a lot of it honestly is, it's the old supply and demand, is that when you've got a lot of bonds coming at one time, there are only so many buyers out there. We just want to, and that's kind of what's happened. And so we just want to be able to look, review it day to day. I mean, I know that's what I previously said, but things can change so quick, as we all know. Anything that happens, in Washington, or anything that happens internationally can just have a huge impact on what happens. So we just, when the opportunity strikes, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's a week from tomorrow, whether it's a month from tomorrow, we just want to be able to move.
Okay. And is there a window of time when this closes, when the authorization that we give you all closes?
I don't think there is there?
There's not an absolute window, there's a practical window, and the practical window is that, you know, if we're there for 2 weeks, or you're out in the market for 2 weeks or a month, and the rates clearly aren't coming back down, then we haven't sold the bonds, and you all can make a decision to postpone or do something else, because I don't think that Stevens wants to go out in the market unless they're absolutely confident they can achieve your goals.
No, correct. And plus, we go through a period of time, we've got an offering document that's ready to go. After a certain period of time, it would need to be updated as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think I hate to say it's self-regulating, but obviously, we want the materials we put in the disclosure document, the offering statement, to be current. And
Right.
if time passes and they're not current, then we've got to pull it down and update it.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this in terms of if it's an average homeowner refinancing their mortgage, and you're looking at going from 398 to 375, if it's worst case, there's fees involved with closing a new loan. And so that's why I was asking what those rates might look like, or what our monthly payment would be, because if there are significant savings, it's worth it. But if going from 398 to that worst case of 375, I don't know what those savings would look like, so.
Well, I think that, and that's a great, normally that is a great analogy with refinancing a bond issue, because what you'd be doing is you'd be structuring a level savings where your payment would be here, and now it's going to be here, and so your annual payment goes down because your interest rate. In this particular situation, we're shooting for a 4-year reduction in maturity date, and so we got to hit that, and then, of course, the increase in payment, we don't want it to be more than what the city's comfortable making. So I think that by going, since that's kind of our structure, hopefully that's going to give us a little bit more flexibility.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Because you bring up a great analogy, because that's normally the way you would compare it to.
Right,
But this
right.
would be a little bit different, that we've got a goal to hit, and we need to
Sure,
hit that goal.
Sure. Yeah, I went from a 30-year to a 15-year mortgage, and I knew it was going to cost me more, but I wanted to because it was a lower interest rate. And so it's kind of the
But your cost of the capital is less.
Yes. I had a question, and I'm sure it was a good one. John always has those good ones he can't remember.
Another parameter, let me answer something else, is that if you'll recall, one of the original goals was to put $150,000, write a check out of the general fund to pay off the principal.
Right, to
It was
reduce
looking like we weren't going to have to do that at all. We were going to get basically better terms than was proposed in July and not have to spend $150,000. And so one of the goals is to eliminate that, so we're not going to have to be out of pocket that $150. However, we're moving from biannual payments to monthly payments, and so I think regardless of how it plays out, we may be coming to the council to ask for an appropriation for the November and December months that will balance out equal, but it's just that those two monthly payments weren't anticipated at that time.
All right, so if these targets are paying it off by 2033 and an estimated maximum debt service of $540,000, are those limits spelled out anywhere in here?
No, just the interest rate, not to exceed interest rate, and the par amount of bonds.
So would those be lower than $540,000 annually?
If we hit the 385, I don't know the answer to that question, but we'll.
Well, that kind of goes back to why I was asking if we're at 398 and we're trying to get it hopefully much lower than 375. I want y'all to do what you can do and sell it at the best rate, average weight. But I'm just curious how that's going to look once we get to the final numbers of what the annual payment would be.
Well, keep in mind, before we do anything, the numbers will be run and they will be sent to the mayor.
So, yeah, and so there's more variables than just the percentage, right? We're looking at the principal. The principal amount in this ordinance is higher than we were looking at on that sheet. So do you have that sheet from the July meeting? What was the principal amount there?
6.48.
So the 6.48 at a lower interest rate, whereas we have a not to exceed 7.1, with the idea being that if we're going to hit it such that you can get a lower interest rate but a higher not to exceed principal amount, then so there's more than just that one variable in play. And so the way we came up with this is, so it first started coming, someone proposed the idea of postponing this ordinance from this meeting to the first meeting in October because the Fed's supposed to come lower the rates, and had no clue how that affects the bond market at all. And so I started saying, well, should we wait or should we not? And then that sort of branched into this hybrid, especially after Leanne saw what happened to the bond market, that we could basically get those numbers right now that are in, or at least as of Thursday, it was looking like we could get the numbers that were proposed in July right now, but we're holding off for something better than that, if that makes sense.
And Mr. Gardner, and you really bring up a great question. When we talk about parameters, you know, you have to be conservative. You want to give yourself flexibility because our objective is to never hit that not to exceed number. That's not what we want to do. But we don't want to back ourselves into a corner that if all of a sudden we give a certain interest rate and we get there and it achieves our goal and it looks like rates may be going up higher, it still gives us the ability that we can go in and lock in those rates. So we try to be conservative with those not to exceed numbers.
Okay. Okay.
And so, no, I was just looking back, and the set that I have is what we discussed from the July term sheet.
Okay.
Knowing that what our goal is the 4-year reduction in principal and maturity, 33 from 37, and then the not to exceed the $25,000 more per month in payment, and of course reduce it all, like you said, Mayor, the contribution as much as we can, but not to exceed the 150 number.
Is it normal from a legal perspective to put those parameters into an ordinance like this?
It's not normal, but we've done it. And from time to time, there are various contingencies that arise that suggest that if you're in a position and you're poised for your underwriters to go into the market and hit it just because there's a one-day change, to do that, confer with the mayor, get the approval to come back, go ahead and offer the bonds, and then come back with a confirming resolution to tell you exactly what the final terms are.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say it's normal. I think Jack, I think I can say for Jack, we'd much prefer to come in here and tell you the bonds have been sold and hear the rates. But I know of at least one other municipality in Pulaski County that's done this recently, has done this in the last couple of weeks because of the same reason. They were prepared to go to market and they backed up and did a parameters ordinance.
Okay.
I've done these before. I was trying to think if we'd done one here in Maumelle, and off the top of my head, I can't remember. I've done them in Little Rock and done them in other cities in Pulaski County. But no, it's not the normal way to do things, but we've certainly done it many times.
We've done it, I mean, now recently with hospitals and with higher education and also with utility systems. It's really because of it's a timing issue. That's really the reason you do a parameters resolution most of the time is from a timing standpoint, just so you're not locked into a specific time of the month that you can go sell bonds. It used to be, it's kind of strange, it used to be several years ago, well, probably been 10 or so now, but issuers didn't have a problem if you sold bonds and then went over a weekend before you adopted a bond ordinance or a resolution and signed a bond purchase agreement. Now, for some reason, we just don't do it anymore. Investors want to know that if they buy their bonds, they want to know that we're locked in and that within the next 24 hours, we can confirm their trades by issuing a confirmation. So it's really, like I said, when we do the parameters, just from a timing standpoint, to be able to give us the timing that we need, that if we hit that date, we can proceed forward.
That leads me to my last question. Will this, from a city perspective, if this passes, would this give the mayor the authority to go out and seal the deal, or do you have to call the city council back to approve a resolution at this point?
The intention would be to give the mayor within these parameters to act to confirm the sale, but then we would come back with a resolution and can have those final terms confirmed by an official action of the city.
Okay, so that we will see the final numbers before we actually approve the sale then?
No, that's not how it works.
Oh, okay, but yes, so the mayor would have the authority to
Yes,
finalize
that's
it. and then
that's
it
the
comes back.
intention. That's
Okay.
the way the ordinance is drawn.
Okay.
Sorry,
No, that's what I was thinking, so I wanted to make sure.
I apologize if that wasn't
Okay.
clear.
Okay.
Councilmember Vapurzian?
What are current numbers at? Current.
where are the current numbers at?
Yes, sir.
We have not updated them since the last time we updated them, just simply because it's just been so sporadic. It's just,
Yeah.
you
I didn't know what bond, what the numbers were for the percentage rate.
You talking about for the
Yeah.
numbers that we have not updated those. There were several issues that went last week, were funding issues that did not even meet the savings target, and so they were either pulled or rejected. And with the volatility, we just didn't want to go into a Monday after such a volatile week next week, and that's when the discussions with Mayor Norris were saying is, let's change the procedure from, not saying, okay, we've got to wait 2 weeks or wait a month, but the idea of doing the parameters where we've got these certain numbers that if things, things really improve, that we'll be able to move more quickly.
So
and
with
efficiently.
the, from what I've read, that the president's really pushing the feds to continue to bring it down, how will that affect?
Well, it
bond market.
can't hurt, it can't
Yeah.
hurt, but I think really, part of what happened too, that when you look at different headlines and why things moved the way they did last week was because there was a feeling out there across the country or whatever that, that the concern for a recession now was starting to not be as much of a concern. And so that's why, interest rates really started dropping, is because there was a concern that we're getting ready to go back into recessionary times. And so you saw the 30-year Treasury fall below 2%. And investors were buying it. And then you saw the 10-year Treasury and the 5-year get down to 1.4 and change, and now it's at about 1.8 and change. So there's just been a lot of movement. And so, again, I hope this makes sense. We just don't want to go out there when it's just so unstable. We would like for there to be some more stability in the bond market, and also not compete with a whole bunch of other issues. I think last week the visible supply, if memory serves me correct, was around 11 billion across the country. That's an awful lot of bonds, coming into the marketplace. And so anytime you have more supply than demand, what happens? You lower the price, right? Well, in the bond world, that means higher interest rates. When you have more demand than supply, you're able to raise the price, which means you raise the price of bonds, which is lower interest rates. And like I mentioned momentarily ago, just when they get as low as they've got, all of a sudden everybody across the country is going, we've got to get in there while the getting's good. But there are only so many investors out there, and so, we've seen this before. I mean, we don't know what rates are going to do in the future. I mean, we can't sit there and tell you they're going to come down. We're optimistic that we're going to be in a better market to accomplish this refunding. And by adopting this parameters ordinance, this gives us that ability to do that.
Thank you.
I hope that answers your
Yes,
question.
Councilmember Holt.
We're talking in terms of immediacy about this. Is there a absolute time, or is time on our side, or is this a window that we need to approach quickly or limited? I mean, do we have a month, if it takes a month or 2 months or whatever, or do we need to do it by next week? I mean, I'm just,
We take as long as it takes.
Right.
So that's a really great question, because a month ago, we just said, yeah, we need to move right now. But I mean, you can only work so fast. So no, we're not going to do this until it's right for Maumelle. We're just not going to throw it out there just to throw it out there. We want it to be the right environment to do so.
so our payment will go to $25,000 a month more than we're paying now, is that correct? Did I hear that?
It was 25,000.
annually.
Yeah, annually.
A year? Okay,
And
okay.
and the 1/6, 1/12 is, when the mayor was talking about monthly, it's 1/12 of the principal payment and 1/6 of the interest payment, because we're getting rid of the debt service reserve. And so that way investors just know that they just feel a little bit more comfortable that payment's going to be there for them.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Hope that answers your question, Mr. Holt.
Seeing no lights on, I'd entertain a motion to suspend the rules and have the second and third readings.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed say no. All right, Madam Deputy City Clerk, if you could, please, read that by title only twice.
In a row?
Well, you can pause and take a drink after the first one.
Thank you. Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 985, an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of franchise fee revenue refunding bonds for the purposes of currently refunding the city's outstanding capital improvement revenue refunding bonds, Series 2012, providing for the payment of the principal of and interest on the bonds, authorizing the execution and delivery of a trust indenture, prescribing other matters relating thereto, and declaring an emergency. Be and enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 985, an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of franchise fee revenue refunding bonds for the purposes of currently refunding the city's outstanding capital improvement revenue refunding bonds, Series 2012, providing for the payment of the principal and interest on the bonds, authorizing the execution and delivery of a trust indenture, prescribing other matters relating thereto, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. With that, yes?
I was going to move that we approve ordinance number 985.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 985. Is there any discussion on that matter? Seeing none, Madam Deputy Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yes.
Councilmember Saunders?
Yes.
Councilmember Scott?
Yes.
Councilmember Gardner?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams? Councilmember Tierney?
Yes.
Councilmember Vapurzian?
Yes.
Councilmember Holt?
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted. At this time, I'd request a motion to declare an emergency and enact the emergency clause.
So moved.
We have motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, Madam Deputy Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Holt?
Yes.
Councilmember Vapurzian?
Yes.
Councilmember Tierney?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams? Councilmember Gardner?
Yes.
Councilmember Scott?
Yes.
Councilmember Saunders?
Yes.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yes.
Thank you. Emergency clause passes. And that you'll be seeing if and when bonds are issued, there will be a confirming resolution brought to the City Council that'll have the numbers, and we'll see if we can't get a little cheat sheet. They probably called something better that explains things for folks. Gentlemen, lady, thank you for coming out. Thank you.
Thank you.
So what we can do is move to back down to mayor's comments. I wanted to mention striping along streets has been addressed in the past. It looks like we will have some striping done by the end of, thank y'all. Some striping done hopefully by the end of this month. And that'll be all of Odom, Bringler, Murphy, and Lake Point Drive. That'll be reflectorized paint is what I think it's called. And so I just wanted to draw y'all's attention to that. Good news. How many of you have heard of the Community Flood Mitigation Project that we applied to FEMA for a grant on the north end of town? The good news is that grant was finally approved by FEMA. And the good news is FEMA will be paying just over $3 million, provided, bad news, we pay about $1 million. And that is for the drain. It's a little over $1 million. And those numbers will come to you as we get there. But I wanted to announce that the 2017 grant application has gone through. For those who have been in this council room for a little while, that is designed to, you still on my tentative schedule?
Just for a moment.
Okay. Is designed to improve the drainage on the tributary of Marche Creek that causes flooding of the residential areas. It aims to prevent flooding of the 120-unit apartment complex, 160 townhomes, and 16 single-family residences. That is the Gables, some of the homes on, oh gosh, garden oaks or green oaks or garden oaks, that especially that cul-de-sac there. And is it Windsor?
Townhomes there across from the church.
It's the one across.
Correct, yes. So that entire area, it's a pretty big project. And so we've got the grant funds from FEMA, and it'll be up to the council to decide whether we want to go forward with that. I was talking with someone, I said it's a little bit unfortunate that there's been so much time that has elapsed since we've had the flooding. I mean, I'm glad that we haven't had flooding since then, but for those that were in the council room when there was a room full of people saying they had nowhere to sleep because their homes had been flooded, or, you know, I think it was right before back to school that were there, or for those of us that were out volunteering and helping people move their furniture out, seeing that would have made this, we would have jumped for joy right now, just knowing that we'd get the bulk of this paid, 75% paid. A few years elapse, and all of a sudden, I think we forget just how negatively impacted that area was. Councilmember Scott?
Yeah, and I vividly remember it because the kids had their clothes laid out on the floor of the apartments because they don't have dressers. You know, people saying, well, what were their clothes doing on the floor? Well, their clothes were there because they're poor and they don't have dressers. So their brand new school clothes were laying on the floor. They got ruined. Cintas came in and did the laundry for them, but they couldn't wash their shoes, so their shoes were all lost. So the kids just getting ready to go to school. Councilmember Timmons was on the council at that time, and her charitable organization fed people in those apartments for a couple of weeks. A lot of us were there moving the furniture. Yeah, yeah. A lot of people came to move. It was, I don't ever want to see those poor people in that situation again. It's bad enough to be poor, and then it's even worse to be poor and then lose what you have. It's just awful.
Yeah. It was and it's happened several times out there.
Yeah, they've been flooded at least twice. I think Mayor Watson said we had two 25-year rains within a very short period of time, because he and I would walk back there often, and just to see the water running in that box culvert there was just nowhere for it to go.
Yeah. Well, you have the two sources of water coming together, and it backs up, and it flood. I've got a great video I think I took off my Facebook page of the Rolling Oak Soccer Complex, or the lake, whatever you wanted to call it at that day, because it was all underwater. And I think that so that was it was a big problem. Councilmember Saunders.
Thank you, Mayor. Needless to say, money's always an issue, especially for a town our size. If with the grant, you mentioned there would be something on the order of $1 million that we would have to contribute as our portion. Is there some way that we can get some sort of local, state grant to help cover that? First question. And second, what about work in kind? Can we take care of part of that million with that?
I don't know about the work in kind. I don't think we can use any other grants to. So we went this, although it's a FEMA grant, we routed through Capidity. That has sort of been the point of contact, and the project's been very interesting. For those that don't know, some of that area is apparently in the buffer zone of one of the Trail for Tears. And so I was reading some of the comments, and it went through, I had no idea there was multiple Trails of Tears, or that one of them came so close. But, some of this money includes having an archaeologist, I'm messing that up and embarrassing myself. But someone to make sure that there's not artifacts being impacted in some of that area. And it has been like I said, we're 2.5 years after we applied for the grant, finally getting in and getting it. We will absolutely look at the work in kind. I'm actually afraid that the answer to a lot of that's going to be no, and that we're going to have to use Union Pacific laborers because it's boring underneath a railroad. And so I think some of the costs estimate a very healthy fee for Union Pacific to do that
They were
work.
the one that helped generate those numbers too, if I remember correctly. So based on their labor.
Correct. Councilmember Gardner?
Is there a time limit for accepting the grant money?
Yes, what that is, I don't really know. So this came in on Thursday. I've got a few things emailed. They've told me to expect more in the packet, a packet to be mailed to me this week. I haven't received it yet. I spoke with our city engineer who asked whether or not we wanted to rush the project or slow the project down. I believe all money has to be expended by 2021. Oddly enough, maybe it was 2022, but I think it was 2021. And it actually started in 2017 when the grant process opened up for that cycle. So it says something like we have from 2017 to 2021 to obligate all those funds.
Does that mean to spend them all or to
Obligate them.
obligate them? I was gonna say spend them, that could be a stretch depending on how quickly they get on it, but, okay.
We'll get McGeorge to do it.
So y'all know more as we know more. It's just been in the burner for so long that as soon as I got word, I was thrilled and figured I'd let you guys know. I'll save that for another day. No, I won't. So, starting in October, it'll probably take a couple weeks to onboard. We're doing a trial or a proof of concept with an entity called C-Click Fix, which is designed to be, I think they told me once, and I've written it down, the white glove service for complaining citizens, which sounds negative, but it's the thing that would allow us to use an app to report things or to call into any phone, and any person that has access can file a complaint or there's a pothole here, rather than currently someone calls in, gets the receptionist, and sometimes it may be, hey, what's a good example? Walking path has bumps. Well, we may go that walking path, call Public Works. We send them down to Public Works. They take the notes down, and then come to find out that's a walking path maintained by Parks and Rec. So sometimes internally it's a mess, and quite frankly, things get lost. It'll allow us to integrate into the website and Facebook and social media, as well as an app, or just calling in to report those, and then you could see a map of not only what's been reported, but what's been resolved. So we'll have about a 3-month trial of that to try from October to December. If the council likes it, we can continue it the following year. But I think we got a pretty good deal for a couple months trial. So I just wanted to announce that because it might be set up before the next council meeting. So with that concludes all of my mayor's comments for now. Planning Commission report will be following the Planning Commission meeting, which if you haven't seen what's on that agenda, it might be worth taking a look at. Council member comments. Councilmember Scott.
I just wanted to compliment the city on the technological advancements that have been made. What you just mentioned is one. The budget program sounds like it's going to be another real improvement to the department heads in the city. And I was talking to your assistant, Scott, recently, Scott Grummer, and he showed me a program that he had developed on the computer that maps all of the lights in the city, the types of bulbs that are in them, their numbering sequence, whether or not they're reported as out, and he can share that information with Entergy, and it's just so telling. I didn't know, but we only have one light bulb of one type in town. There's one that's different from everything else, but I just thought that was just amazing. I thought you did a really good job on it. So I'm just very pleased.
We are, I have spent, and Scott has spent, and other department heads have spent an incredible amount of time sitting through webinars, video conferences with 80 bazillion different sales forces. And it seems like every time I get done with one, I realize just how much better we could do things. So I have a list of 8,000 different things I'd like to do. We're narrowing it down to a very select small group. Just as an idea, the C-Click Fix, if we like, it's $10,000 a year. The budget and reporting software is 15 to 20 if we want complete online checkbooks for the public to see. And then GIS, I think we're doing for a couple $1,000 a year. And there's a lot of other really neat stuff out there. But thank you, Councilmember Scott. Councilmember Mosley.
Yeah, I was watching the video of our last meeting, and there was, Alderman Holt talked about a lady that he had heard from on the 5G network ordinance 983 that was passed, who was worried about
Radio waves.
yeah, radio waves and that sort of thing. And I was also interested in having a copy of any letter that might have been sent to her as far as the safety or thing. I don't know if you responded to her or not.
I did not respond to her.
Okay.
Federal law prevents the city from considering those scientific claims, I believe.
Well, federal law, I guess to clarify a little bit, federal law mandates that we allow them to construct those facilities in the right-of-way, and state law also does, but it sets, some parameters and requirements for our ordinance. So as far as the ordinance that we were passing, we were just doing that to modify the ordinance we already had to have under federal law to be in compliance and in line with all of the state requirements. So as a city, we don't have discretion over whether we're going to allow that. We just have some discretion on are we going to regulate it as much as the state allows us to do so, and we want to have the ordinance in place so that we could do that.
Okay. I guess all I'm thinking is if you or the city or anybody has done any type of a look at what the safety of these things are, if there are any dangers, it'd be just nice to know. I just feel like, if at some point there is some representation by the feds or anybody as to whether this is safe or not, I hate to call people as being too worried about things because you never know, So anyway, if you have any information, I'd be interested. I was going to get with you anyway on one of the items that was on the Planning Commission as far as the pool and finding out really why they had to go back through this process to get a variance. I'm very curious as to why they would need to do that, but it's nothing I can bring up here. I'll just visit with you and see.
Okay,
Thank
that'd be
you.
fun.
Councilmember Vapurzian.
I wanted to thank Councilmember Gardner, the many volunteers, Alicia and the ladies at Chamber, Miss Judy, and so many other people that made the Bash on the Boulevard the success that it was. I had a great time out there, and it was my first time being a vendor out there, and it was a lot of fun. It was a little warm, but yeah, it was very fun, and the volunteers were overly eager to help in any way possible. We got help setting up, we got help tearing down, and it was just a great experience. I didn't get to ride the hot air balloon, which I was a little upset about, but there's always next year. But no, it was just such a great time, and even the bands were enjoyable. I thought I'm gonna have to suffer through, these people singing, but they were good, and I was thoroughly impressed. It was just a great time, and the smell of constant fried foods. I put on 12 pounds, I'm sure. But no, it was just a great thing, the chamber just did an outstanding job.
They broke records. They had 4,300 plus is a good estimate, and it was a lot more than they'd ever had. So it was a great day. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. If there's no additional city council member comments, Madam City Attorney,
No comments.
Deputy City Clerk,
No comment.
you have done a good job. Thank you. With that, I entertain a motion to adjourn. We've got
You practice that all week.
we have a motion. Do I hear a second? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Motion carries. We're adjourned.
Oh, you're awesome.